Right.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Table Chat with Homestead Heart.
Yes.
Hopefully, you all have enjoyed the very first episode that we released last Monday. And we're trying our best to do this on a weekly basis every Monday night at 7 p.m. Okay?
Yes.
So, y'all, for today's video, you all saw the title to this video, you all, and we thought it was a very crucial topic, especially with everything that's going on in the world right now.
Yes.
We thought that this was a great topic to discuss.
It's a very, very important topic. It's an on-time topic. It's dealing with a lot of people needing things for us like food right away without being. You can't wait when it comes to eating, feeding
That's
your
true.
family. You know,
That's so true.
You got to have that food right away.
That's so true. That is so true.
There's no stalling. When the children's stomachs start, getting a little stressed. Grown people, everybody, all Americans across the board. Whenever you get ready to eat, you want your food now. There's no waiting.
That's true. And one thing that I would even, go far as to say is that I know sometimes, people may feel like this is something that's not really necessary because you think that, well, you know what, things will be okay. It'll be rough for just a little while and then it'll get better, so I'll be good for a month or so, and I'm going to say that is not a good way to approach the purpose and why a victory garden is more important now than ever before, because you don't know if it's going to be a short while.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we thought that the pandemic was, we didn't think that was going to be something that we would have to deal with, and let alone have to deal with it for as long as we did.
Yeah. And just imagine the stress level on the person in the family that provides food for the family. You can be that husband.
Yeah.
You can be that wife. You can be a single mother, single father.
Grandma, grandpa, auntie, uncle.
The stress of like when you wake up in the morning, okay, breakfast. The stress of dinner.
What am I going to feed these children?
And the worst thing that you really can imagine is that you won't be able to feed your family, and the little ones is crying because they are hungry.
That's so true. That is so true. That is so true.
Yeah, so that stress, you want to make sure that you don't have to really deal with so much when stores is not having the items that you need to feed your family.
Yeah.
You can do certain things on your own before that happens.
That's right. That's right, you all.
Before that happens, you can basically go ahead and just get warmed up and learning how to garden.
Why a victory garden is more important now than ever before.
Yes.
Because all you have to do is just look at the time, right? Look at the time that we're living in. Just if you turn on the news for 10 minutes, you'll see.
You'll see.
So it's so important, you all, that we all get into the mindset of doing something to take responsibility for our own families.
Yes.
Okay. And, before we go any further into this, where we talk about a victory garden, the one thing I want to stress before we go forward is if you are in the mindset that you will just simply go over to somebody else's house, like I'll just go to my friend's house, or I'll just go to my cousin's house, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
If you're in the mindset that you're just going to go over to somebody else's house because you know that they have been preparing for their families, you need to get out of that mindset right now.
Yes.
And I'm telling you that for a reason, because I don't care how close you may be, you know, when it comes to them or another person choosing you and your family over their children, over their family, that's going to be a hard pass, okay? Yes. Especially if they hardly have enough for their little mouths, to be fed, it's going to be very difficult for them to rationalize giving half to you when you had every opportunity to do the same thing that they were doing.
The worst thing that you can do in that situation, what Mrs. H just was discussing, is to procrastinate.
Procrastinate. Don't do it.
Yeah, just procrastinate, put it off, or say, I don't need to do that. I'm not doing that. I'm not even trying to stock up all this food. It don't make no sense. But when it hit the fan, when things hit the fan, you really gonna go into panic mode.
Yes, you are. Listen, and we're talking to those of you who, in this instance, we're talking to those of you who feel like it's not necessary.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say it this way: it's absolutely necessary, because, look, a lot of the comments that we heard during the pandemic was, yeah, my so-and-so who made fun of me for so many years for canning, for preserving my own food in any kind of way. You know, they said that I was crazy for doing this. And then when the pandemic hit, they were the first ones to try to come knocking on my door. And some of the people in the comments when we were having the discussion were saying, yeah, we helped them. And then there were those people who said, no, we didn't help them. We told them to go on back over to where they were and continue to make fun of us, right? Yeah. So you don't know who you're going to run into when something happens. So basically what we're saying is, don't procrastinate. Don't think it's just some joke in that, you know, we all should have learned some lessons by now.
Yeah. And also you have family members that do things out of spite.
Yeah.
You know, it was this one lady that was saying she was stocking up. She was putting away stuff. And then her son just comes in there and just eat up food, you know, out of spite, you know, just go into the preserved food that she was preserving just to eat it up, just to be in spite of not being, you know, not going along with what she was doing.
This is not even necessary. Why is she doing this? I'm just gonna open this and eat this. We need this. I'm hungry right now. And so, and that's a problem. Yeah. That's a problem. If you're dealing with somebody that don't respect what you're doing, I don't care who it is. Yeah. Okay. If they don't respect you enough, whether they agree with you or not, if they don't respect you enough to just let you do what you're doing without making mischief, that's somebody you need to make a quick decision about what you finna do. Because a person like that will cause you to be in dire straits.
Yeah. And what are you losing? By having a victory garden, or planning, you know, like a food storage. What are you're not losing anything.
That's true.
You know, that's why you got to get with people with like minds that think alike. Because if you have somebody that's like against every move that you make, imagine when hard times come and food just run out. What are those people going to do?
Those will become your worst enemies.
Yes.
They will become your worst enemies.
They will.
So that's something to really, really consider, which is a great segue into the topic of this video, is why a victory garden is more important now than ever before.
Yes.
And actually, I have I have a little note here because we had some points that we didn't want to forget. So we just kind of wrote some things down. But in talking about the victory garden, let's talk about how they came about in the first place, right? Now, we know about WW1 and where that came from, which was somewhere in Europe, how they came up with that, right, and started doing that for their citizens. But WW2 is when our country actually started pushing and, you know, trying to urge the citizens of this country to go ahead and start planting victory gardens, because the agricultural system on the larger scale and also other resources during that time were being allocated for the soldiers, right? Yeah. And for others who worked in the government who were also a part of making sure that the soldiers were taken care of. So all of those resources were being used for those purposes, which meant that the citizens did not have very much of anything, if any, really, to be able to go to the store and purchase or whatever the case may have been. Really wasn't a lot of options there, because the large scale agricultural or large scale farms, they were taking that and they were using that in other places, right?
Yeah.
And so it's no different now. If something were to kind of pop off like that now, then it would be the same thing. I think the difference is that there are so many more of us now.
Yeah. And you think about it, according to the National Park Service in 1944, it was estimated that 20 million victory gardens was producing 40% of the fresh fruit and vegetables that was consumed in the U.S.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
20 million victory gardens.
That's a lot.
There was some hardworking people back then.
Yeah.
And so now we got the same chance, you know,
Yeah.
to be able to get victory gardens up and going, because we don't know how things are going to go.
Yeah.
But what we do know, that we control our own destiny.
Yeah.
When it comes to growing our own food.
That's right. That's right.
You know.
So I guess the main thing would be is start getting in the mindset of, hey, we have to have our own victory garden.
Yes.
2025 is the year to start your victory garden. Well, Mrs. H, it's June. It's probably too late. And no, it is not too late. Okay. I'm going to tell you why. Because you still have the fall coming up.
Yes.
You still have the fall coming up. And you can start designing and planning for your victory garden right now. And we're actually going to get into planning a victory garden and you taking some of these steps to make sure that you get your garden planned out.
Exactly.
And ready for planting.
Exactly. And you know what the key thing is? She just mentioned the fall season. The leaves fall off the trees. We use those leaves to build the soil during the wintertime.
We do.
Get all the leaves that you can get, you know, and then cover them up, you know, and make sure that you keep feeding that soil. You keep feeding that soil. And you know what? When the springtime comes, the whole winter, we get prepped and ready for the spring, where we can have the biggest, beautiful spring garden ever. We can collect everything we need, from compost, you know, whatever kind of, fertilizer, you know, it need to sit for a while.
Yep.
You know, we can plan right now.
That's right.
So don't never think you can't.
Growing food is not something that is new now, right?
Yeah.
We started somewhere, like Ms. Dave said. And when we first start, it's going to be difficult. It may even be overwhelming, right? Because you feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. But if I tell you that if you just start, you won't be an amateur for very long, okay?
No,
you'll start getting the hang of it. You're going to start seeing what work, what don't work. You know, the point that we're trying to make is the last thing you want to do is wait till the last minute to decide you want to do it.
Yeah.
And there may not even be seeds available. So what I would recommend is that you don't wait and that you go ahead and get started. Okay.
Yeah.
So now go ahead.
And also, you know, we have all these YouTube channels that can show you where you can fast track where it won't take you that long.
Yeah.
You know, we already made the mistakes.
So true.
So you can see the mistakes on what not to do, you know, for us, like your victory garden.
That's so true.
Do not wait,
Don't
people.
wait.
Let's make it past this hard time that's forecast coming. You know, it's a time to where we got to be prepared, and we cannot procrastinate. You know, we have family, you know, young ones, get them involved. You know, if you can get them involved, hey, 5 years down the line, somebody in that family probably just take off and be the best gardener in the family. Could be the youngest.
That's true, but you have to initiate it.
Yeah.
You have to start it, okay? So don't wait. Don't procrastinate, and don't keep saying that it's not necessary.
Yeah.
All right? If you can grow a garden, please do so. If you can, now is the best time to start figuring out if you can grab yourself a space at a community garden in somebody's backyard.
Yeah.
Now is the time to start working on that, y'all. You don't want to wait until it's a must do because you have no choice, right? So don't wait.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people are sitting on the gold mine.
mm-hmm.
You can have a grandmother's house with a big backyard. It's fenced in, got a pecan tree back there, and the dog tied up, but you're not really even thinking about a garden.
Right.
And that is like a gold mine because it's probably sitting where sun gets to it 6 to 8, 9 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And you can turn that into one of the beautiful, most lush gardens.
That's so true.
You never even think about it. You can be like,
Yes.
wow,
Mm-hmm.
just think. Just think, you can look at your auntie's houses. A lot of people have homes and they're not even using the backyard.
Yeah.
So think about that.
That's true.
It's just food for thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and talk about planning a victory garden. And we're just going to go over some of the key points here for planning a victory garden. Now, Mr. H already was talking about like how you can go about finding a space, right?
Yeah.
It could be the family's backyard. It could be your best friend. Y'all can get together, and one best friend may have the biggest yard ever, and y'all could get together and create a garden that would be, you know, maybe big enough for your family and theirs.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you got to be creative because so many people do live in apartment homes. You may live in a townhouse where HOA won't permit a backyard garden.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
If you ask me, there should be a law in every state that says that if a person living in an HOA wants to start a victory garden, that should be a law, and HOA should not interfere with that, okay?
Yeah.
But even in that, some people have backyards, but they're completely shaded.
Yeah.
And may be shaded by trees that don't belong to them, right? So you do have some circumstances that could be extenuating, and you have to get creative with that, all right? But let's talk about planning your garden. Yeah. The first thing you want to do, once you have determined where your garden can go, you also must determine how many hours of sunlight that garden is going to get. Like Mr. H was saying, you need to choose a sunny location that will get you between 6 to 10 hours of sunlight each and every day. Because your crops are going to need the sunlight to be successful. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's number 1.
Yes.
Number 2. Okay? You've chosen your sunny location. It's getting plenty of sunlight, and you are happy with where it's going to be going. So what's next? Number 2, you're going to determine the size of your garden.
Yes.
And how do you determine the size of your garden? You do that based on the size of your family, right?
Yes.
Now, it is recommended for a family of 4 that if you're going to grow food, you want to get a garden that's approximately between 400 and 500 square feet. And that's a family of 4.
Yeah.
And you can grow a lot of food in a 500 square foot garden.
For a
right?
family of 4,
Yeah.
That's a lot of food.
That is a lot of food.
And you know, a lot of food grow up vertical.
It does.
You know?
It does. You can create vertical gardening plans, and that can consist of a lot of things like sugar pie pumpkin, butternut squash, cucumbers, right? There are so many things that you can grow vertically. Even pole beans, or the Chinese noodle beans. Those beans get so long, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you can think about, like Ms. H said, vertical gardening, and you won't even have to worry about how much space is being taken up if you're growing in a smaller space.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You know. So number 3 is decide what to plant. You got to decide what food that you really like, and you know, like I would say, most people love the basic beans, pole beans, tomatoes. I would say squash. you know.
Which is super easy to grow.
Yeah, super easy to grow. And you find those super easy things to grow and find out what the children like.
Right.
Find out what your husband and wife like.
Right.
And so y'all get together and see how that grows in your zone. You know, we have different zones, different, you know, timetables on how long food will grow in this area and that area.
Right.
And find out the strength of each crop that matches that zone.
Yeah.
You grow that.
That's true.
You
That's
know?
true. Growing what you and your family will eat. Please don't grow okra if you don't like okra, because okra is a heavy producer.
Yeah.
If you grow okra because it produces a whole lot of okra, you can get a lot from your plants, and that's your only reason for growing it.
Yeah.
And then, God forbid, you actually need whatever you have preserved, and all you got in there, majority, is some okra.
Yeah.
And don't nobody like it.
Yeah.
You're gonna make everybody sick, because
Yeah.
because everybody, especially if somebody is, you know, we have family members that cannot, and I mean cannot take eating okra if there's a hint of slime on that okra.
Yeah.
They cannot take it if it's a slight sliminess. It ain't gonna work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, a main crop that everybody loves is potatoes.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with potatoes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a heavy producer. You know, produce a lot. If you do it, you know, the way how it should be done.
Right.
Hey, potatoes, children love. They
French fries, hash browns. Yeah, you can, if you had a 10-pound bag of gold potatoes, and I say gold potatoes because that's pretty much what we eat. We don't eat any kind of russet potato. But if we had 10 pounds of gold potatoes, red potatoes, listen, we planted approximately 10 pounds of market bought potatoes. If you haven't seen that video, we'll probably try to link it at the end of this one.
Yeah.
But we planted 10 pounds and we harvested 90. So that means that we netted 80 pounds of potatoes from a 10-pound crop that we, or, you know, the initial 10 pounds that we planted. Now, the other thing that you can plant that grow a lot of that we really don't eat is sweet potatoes.
Yeah.
Sweet potatoes are another crop. They're a vining crop as well, but the roots are developed underground.
Yes.
And y'all, I've seen people grow sweet potatoes in bins and tubs and all of that. And in those bins and tubs, they have harvested so many pounds of sweet potatoes.
Yeah.
So if sweet potatoes is something you and your family enjoy eating, that's something else.
Yeah. Yeah. And for a lot of people that like to stay in shape, physical fitness, salads. Like,
oh my goodness.
Make sure you grow your tomatoes. Make sure you grow your lettuce. Of course, peppers, if you like peppers.
Yeah.
You know, any leafy green
Right.
that you like in your salad.
Right.
Onions. You know, just do all of that. And then also carrots.
That's true. Oh, carrots.
Yeah.
Because they are so versatile.
Yeah.
Right? You can do a lot with carrots. It's one of those versatile crops. So, yeah, if your family like carrots, you can make candied carrots. Like, for example, we don't eat sweet potatoes, so we don't eat candied yams and stuff like that. But we do eat candied carrots, and they are absolutely delicious.
Yes, yes. And don't forget about the root crops. You know, that's why the fall season is very important. Like we stated earlier.
Yeah.
Always just keep your mind on basically how you can start this victory garden as soon as possible, because it's food prices is so high.
That's so true.
And you could be putting that money somewhere else.
That's true.
You can be putting that money into the victory garden. While you buying food, what, $100 for a little bag of vegetables? They can go towards fertilizer. You know?
Oh my goodness. Frozen vegetables are ridiculously expensive.
Man.
And don't buy fresh produce. And don't let the produce be fresh and organic. So you are spending so much money, you all. And we have, and we always liken this like to our seed shop.
Yeah.
Like when we show the package of any kind of seed, brassicas, whatever the case may be. and we're showing you that seed for $1, or we're showing you the packet for $1.50. And some of the seed packets have 1, 2, 3, 400 seeds in it, depending on what you're buying, right? And you have just bought up to 400. I'm not going to say 400. I'm going to say half of them don't germinate, okay? And that's not the case. But I'm saying if you purchase 400 seeds and half of them don't germinate, you have literally bought 200 plants for $1.50.
And think about that. You think about that because when you go to buy a bag of vegetables, it could be cauliflower, that mix that you...
Broccoli, Normandy blend.
Yeah.
I love that mix of Normandy blend with the squash and zucchini and carrots and all of that in there. If you buy that bird's eye 5-pound bag, that's $7, or could be more depending on where you at. It's $7 a bag. And here I can grow all of that's in that bag for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, and then you think about it, every time we go grocery shopping, we buy those little bags, penny to the dollar adds up. You want to save as much money as possible.
That's right.
By growing. That means that you don't have to spend these $200 or $300, $400 food bill a month.
Oh, yeah. That
and
hurts.
then it's increasing.
That hurts.
It's increasing, y'all.
Right.
So these victory gardens really will save you so much money.
That's true.
We can look at it and take it for granted. Oh, I don't want to get out there and work hard in that sun. And for what, you know? Of course, we got to deal with the pests, all what comes with garden. But we will get a good yield out of a lot of stuff that we grow.
That's true.
And we will save a lot of money by growing our own groceries.
That's true.
A lot of money. That money can go somewhere else.
That's so true. Now, let me show you what we mean. So these are the seeds that are on our seed shop, okay? And I have 2 different varieties of seeds here. This one is a French breakfast radish, because some people love pickled radishes, right? And this one is the Desiccio broccoli, which grows very well in the fall. Like if I grow this variety, I won't grow this one in the spring. I'll grow this one in the fall because it grows so fast and so well in the fall. In my opinion, that's been my experience, right? But, and of course, every seed packet, no matter what you purchase from our seed shop, every last one of these packets are $1.50. I don't care how many seeds are inside. They're all $1.50. But I want you to see this. You're not planting all those seeds in one season. This is hundreds of seeds in here. And you're not planting all of these in one season. The same with the French breakfast radish, right? You can plant these in early spring, or you can plant them in the fall. But look at all those seeds.
A lot of seeds.
So do you see what we mean when we say, look at how many plants you can get from this.
That's a lot of plants.
And if you practice square foot gardening, you can grow one of these in every square foot. So if you wanted to grow 25 heads of broccoli or 50 heads of broccoli, you can do it for under $1.50, or for about $1.50, right? So growing your own versus purchasing a 5-pound bag of broccoli for $6.
Man.
A 5-pound bag of broccoli for $6, when I can get from one plant 5 pounds, right? Because not only can I harvest the head of the broccoli will, depending on the variety, will go ahead and get you some side shoots as well that you can continue to harvest that broccoli from, right? So just imagine you're not getting 5 pounds. You're getting a lot more than that from just simply planting a few seeds. All of these seeds will last you 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
Because I ain't never had nobody to tell me, Mrs. H, I'm finna go plant 200 heads of broccoli. Right?
No, it never happened.
I ain't never heard that, right?
And you just mentioned that broccoli costs $5 a pound.
In the frozen section.
That's for now. Imagine if price go up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's best to just go ahead and be safe than sorry.
It really is. It really is.
Do the victory garden, y'all.
It really is, so that you can have, you can choose first off what you want to eat. If you're growing your own victory garden, you can choose what you want to eat versus whatever somebody just gonna give you from a food bank. If the food banks are still gonna be available, right? So you really want to take control while you have the opportunity to take control.
Now that's a key point. You're right about that.
Yes, you really want to take control while you have the opportunity to take control. Now for us in the fall, that's when we grow our best brassica crop.
Yes.
I don't care. Cabbages and broccoli and cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, we have yet to have real success with Brussels sprouts. And I think it's because I've always started them too late. Yeah. So starting Brussels sprouts like right now for zone 8, right? Yeah. We're getting them started now so that hopefully we can get a good harvest in November, right? So you all, that right there is one of the key factors right there. Growing what you love to eat. Don't sleep on those perennial crops either. Yeah. Don't sleep on perennials like asparagus. Don't sleep on perennials like green globe artichoke. And unless you're in colder climates, then you have to start those all over again. But also Jerusalem artichoke or sunchoke, which is an excellent crop for those who may be diabetic and really can't have potatoes. Sunchokes is just like potatoes. Wow. But you can eat them without the fear of having blood sugar spikes and all of that, right? And they come back every year and they put on these beautiful flowers, look like sunflowers. Wow. But they put on these beautiful flowers and they come back every single year. So don't sleep on your perennial vegetables and also herbs, okay? Yes. Yes, and also, I always think that you can do it. Don't think that you can't grow a victory garden. Don't think that you don't have a green thumb. You do have a green thumb. You just got to follow the steps on how to do it because the sun will rise and shine. Fertilizer would fertilize. Everything will work with the proper steps. That's true. We all have problems. You saw us, last year. Yeah. And now you see we didn't give up. Right. You got to keep pushing. Okay. Got to keep pushing. Number 4. You got to plan the layout of your garden. Yes. Remember we told you to decide how much square footage you wanted that garden to be and where you wanted it to be located. Now you need to plan that garden. Yes. So some of you are going to do raised beds. Some of you may do in-ground gardening, right? But in any case, just plan your garden. Just get a sheet of paper. You don't have to be an artist. Yes. All you have to do is, if all you could do is draw lines and stick figures, that works because that's pretty much what I do. Yes. That's all you got to do. Just plan it. Yeah. And know what you want and move out. How you want it to look, you know? So if you decide, hey, I want to put 12 raised beds, how do you want them to be laid out in your garden, right? Yeah. Do you want flowers to be added to your garden, and where do you want those flowers to be added at? What do you want in your garden? Yeah. Do you want to find a corner somewhere in the far ends of your garden where you can maybe stick a plum tree or something like that, or a peach tree? What do you want that garden to look like? Do you want to have a few berry bushes there, right? Yeah. Do you want to put in some blackberries, some blueberries, some raspberries? Do you want to have a little place for some strawberries, right? Yeah. So you want to plan it out, but just draw it on paper. Once you get that square footage, then just draw it out on paper, right? And it's easy to measure the square footage of your garden if you have like one of those little rolling wheels, or there are websites too that will allow you to kind of use kind of like a Google map type of a deal to zoom in on the space that you want to plant in your garden, and it'll allow you to pinpoint the corners, right? And once you get it all pinpointed out in Google Maps, it'll instantly give you the square footage. So you can do that as well. I don't remember the site, But you can do that. Just Google it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can do that too.
Yes.
And then you can go and you can print it out and you can go from there and say, okay, I want this here. I want beans here. You know, I want trellises here. I want the garden to be pretty, you know, or not. You don't have to, you know, you can just grow food.
Yeah.
Right. But you want to plan the layout of the garden. And while you're planning the layout, start your seeds. Okay.
Yes.
Get your seeds started. If you're growing in the fall and this is going to be your first garden ever, plant, you know, get your little seed trays. I have mine here because this is my seed starting shelf from the spring. And we haven't taken it down because we're putting our fall stuff on here, right?
Yes.
And so these are my little trays. I think this is a 72 sale right here. And you can buy your little trays. And you can get them from, I don't know, Greenhouse Mega Store. You can get them from Amazon. You can get them from the big box stores. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Get yourself some trays. And if you're deciding like, well, what about seed starting mix? That little bag of Jiffy might work for some people, but it ain't gonna work for everybody. So I know that they have the Pro Mix seed starting mix. It comes in a big compressed bale, and it's expensive. I'm gonna tell you now, it's expensive, like $50, right? But it'll last you a long time because you are not gonna use that whole bale. In fact, we still got some. So but you can decide, like, or you can make your own seed starting. Well, we don't have the Pro Mix. We have the peat moss, right?
Yeah, peat moss.
It comes in a big compressed bale. But if you want to make your own, you can make your own seed starting mix. You can use some peat moss. You can use some perlite. And you can even mix in a little bit of worm castings in that and just equal parts. Okay? All equal parts. So if you're doing the peat, the perlite, and the worm castings, where it's going to be a gallon of peat, a gallon of perlite, and a gallon of worm castings. Right? And if you don't have worm castings, you can use the peat moss and you can also just use the perlite, equal parts. And the one thing I would say about the peat moss though, if you have a sifter or something, I would sift that peat moss to get the larger sticks out for seed starting because you don't want the big woody stems to affect your seeds germinating and growing properly. Okay. All right. So that's one of the things that we're going to continue with probably in another video, because we really want you to understand how to prepare a good seed starting mix so that your crops will get the very best chance at growing successfully and being planted in your garden.
Yes. We basically want to encourage y'all to plan it out to where it fits you and your family. You know, to where you can just customize it to where, hey, you have something that you can work with. You know, the aisles is big enough for you to harvest your food. That's very important. It may not seem like it's not important when you're doing it, but when you're trying to get in there and get all your food, you want to make sure you have enough room for your cart to roll up and down the aisle, so you can basically, you know, go ahead and harvest and roll it out.
That's true.
Instead of just struggling with a basket, going through them tight rows. It's tough, especially when the sun is just beaming.
And another thing, for those who may have disabilities or those who may be elderly and you just can't do a lot of bending and all of that, you do have raised beds that are waist level, right? Yeah. To where, like, if you were, if you had to sit down in a chair and work your garden, they have raised beds that are, you know, I mean, our table is right here. You can't see it, but they have raised beds that are just like this, to where you can literally sit and work the raised beds, right? Or if you can stand, but you can't do a lot of bending, you can literally walk around and work your raised beds, and you can purchase some like that. Or if you know somebody who's pretty handy with some tools, they can even build them for you. Yeah. Okay. And build them, you know, custom to what you like. Right. But, you know, there are options. You just, you know, I guess we just have to be more creative with how we design our gardens to fit our needs and our lifestyle. Here
we go at number 5. Prepare the soil. You know, we always start preparing the soil during the fall season.
Yeah.
Collect a lot of leaves,
Mm-hmm.
keep them in bags,
Yeah.
put holes in them, and let them break down.
That's right.
That way, you know, when it rains, it'll get wet, it'll break down, and let nature do its thing with the leaves.
That's true.
And those leaves they help the soil out so much.
They sure do.
Brings in worms. Worms love leaves. You know, and that soil would be a deep, dark color, right?
Yes, it would. Yes,
be nice and dark. You know,
you can even add coffee grounds, like when you bring your leaves. You know, you get your leaves in the bags and stuff. If you drink coffee, or you know a Dunkin' Donuts somewhere where they'll give you the coffee grounds, y'all can add coffee grounds to those leaves and moisten them just a bit, you know.
Yeah.
And like Mr. H said, put those holes in the bag and close that bag up, and you will come back, y'all, and I'm telling you, you will have some very, very dark compost to put down over into your garden.
And sometimes it'll break down so good to where it's just like rich soil, like deep, rich stuff. You know, and the plants just love it. Yep. You know, and of course, you know, like wood chips, you got to get those wood chips a lot of time. But they
about
do
a
have
year.
About a year, and that's good with a little mix of that, and you constantly building that soil up.
True.
So when that springtime comes, man, you have some of the most beautiful crops you can just, I'm telling you, you know.
Now there's another option for that as well, because I know a lot of people are not interested in buying the bag soil and compost anymore, you know, because so many people have been having trouble. I mean, it's just the stories are becoming more and more just
difficult.
Often, you know, you're hearing these stories about people buying this and people buying that, and it did this to their gardens and all of that, you know. So people are really trying to move away from that. So one of the options that you have, if you want to get a good compost and you're not able to make your own right now, is soil 3. And soil 3, although, you know, it does cost, right?
Yeah, it does.
For that big 1-ton bag. But y'all, they back that stuff. They guarantee it. And the reviews on it are through the roof. So if you have a soil 3 in your area, then, and that's within your budget, that's definitely an option if you can't make your own compost. Now, another fast way to get some compost within just a few months is to get some backyard chickens. And
then what I learned that with the backyard chickens, it has to sit for a while. So it's good to have a composting bin, so you'll know exactly how long it's been sitting, and then you'll know, hey, it's good to go. Because it don't take chickens as long as cows. But you can keep up with your compost if it's chickens. If you run across some cow manure, let it sit up for a year, and then you have some good stuff.
Don't mix the two.
No, don't mix it. Don't mix it.
Because the chicken manure, it'll break down 2 to 3 months. You got some composted chicken manure, and that'll be something wonderful to put over the top of your soil to kind of help feed your soil and whatnot, and kind of work it in and all of that, you know. But like Ms. Dave said, we typically harvest the chicken compost out of our chicken houses. We harvest that around early spring, like it's still cold outside, you know. We're not planting, I would say around February. Was it February or January?
I say it was around about February.
We take it all out, and Mr. H will put it in one space, and he will cover it up, and it'll just sit there until it's time for us to put it in the garden. Don't put raw chicken manure in your garden. That's a hot compost, right? It's a hot compost, and if you put raw manure on your plants, you will surely burn them. Because I don't know if you've ever experienced like being around a chicken coop that it's smelled, and you can have that like ammonia smell and all of that. That's because it's raw, and that will burn. So do not use raw chicken manure. Let it break down, and then add it to your plants, because with all of that hard work you don't want to blow it by
Yeah.
putting raw manure.
Yeah, exactly. So, that soil building the soil up, that's key.
It is
And
key.
it's good to start, like in the fall season, and get ready for this summer.
That's true.
Spring
That's
and summer,
true.
because, man, those some tough months that we got to deal with.
So that is a very good point. So that he just made. So once your fall crops come out, start preparing those beds for the spring. There are some crops that we don't even bother taking them out of the garden until the spring, just simply because the roots keep that soil nice and aerated and, nice and loose and fluffy. And when we're actually getting ready to put the compost down, that's when we'll pull the plants out.
Yeah.
Some of our pepper plants, corn even, there are just some plants. We never leave tomatoes in the ground.
No.
Once the tomatoes are done, we take the tomatoes out because we don't want to promote any disease in the garden. So we always take the tomato, anything that's in the nightshade family, we take that completely out of the garden.
Yeah.
But anything else, we leave it, and it just sits in the roots, green bean plants, all of it. It just stay in the garden. And then once the temperatures, we get that cold snap, it's freezing outside, all of that is going to play a part in your soil not becoming compacted.
Yeah.
And so we'll take them out afterwards when we're trying to get the soil ready for spring in around January or so. We'll take all that stuff out. And then, Mr. H, like he said, we'll gather our compost, get our compost added. Now, that's because our gardens are established.
Yeah.
If your gardens are new, then you're going to be starting differently, like Mr. H said.
Yeah.
But our gardens are established, so for us, it's just a cycle.
Yeah. And for those who start a new garden, I recommend starting that garden, preparing a fall garden, and then the winter time, just getting everything you need, leaves and bags, everything to build that soil, have it already sitting ready.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people sometimes leave bags of leaves on the side of the road for the trash man to come get, so you can just go and you can get
Talk
it
to the
good,
neighbors.
talk to the neighbors,
Yeah.
and you can pick up the leaves and you can have all your stuff lined up.
Like I said, coffee grounds, because coffee grounds is literally like, I don't know, it's like a steroid.
Yeah.
You put them coffee grounds in and you're bringing in all kind of worms and just other organisms that live in the soil. They will come up through the holes in that bag, and trust me, they will start breaking those leaves down for you, right? It's like candy for them.
Yeah.
It's I don't know, it's something, they just go full steam ahead.
Yeah.
So coffee grounds, make sure you add those coffee grounds and make sure you moisten those leaves in the bag and then seal it up, y'all, and that's gonna be a wrap.
Yeah.
Let them sit there for however long you can. I don't care if it's a year. Let them sit there.
Yeah, because that first year as a beginning gardener could be your best year.
It could be. Yeah.
You got everything that you need. You studied YouTube videos. You got the drip irrigation. You got the ground cover. You already got the soil ready and prepared.
Right.
And you also got to watch out for the insects, but that's a whole new different video.
Well, and to his point, because we didn't discuss this, make sure if you're a new gardener, make sure you think about irrigation, how you're going to water your plants. Do you really want to be out there in the heat watering your crops? Depending on how big the garden is, do you want to be out there in the heat for an hour or two even?
That's very important.
So maybe consider some form of irrigation, a drip irrigation or overhead irrigation or sprinkler system, whatever your money can afford. Then, or even soaker hoses, because we started with those because we didn't buy drip. We bought soaker hoses and ran them down the aisle, and that worked.
Yeah.
But we realized drip was better.
Yeah. To be honest with y'all, before drip irrigation, we had the water hose and buckets.
We did.
I would haul those buckets and water each crop
by hand. Yeah.
And it paid off.
Yeah, because our water hoses couldn't reach some of the crops. So he would have to fill the buckets up, take the buckets over there, and then, he would either pour it inside of our big watering can, and then we'd water all the way down the aisle, and that got old so fast.
Yeah, it got really old.
Drip irrigation.
Yeah, drip irrigation is key.
Right.
Even a water hose, you just cannot just get a water hose. It's just so time consuming.
It takes so much time.
Yeah.
Consider something where even if you could afford to buy the little timer that you attach to the faucet, and then the water hose goes to that, so that water will come on when you say it need to come on, and for however long you say it should be on, and it'll turn itself off, so you never have to worry about watering your garden. Okay?
Yeah, start checking these things out now.
Right.
So your victory garden would be a victory for you and your family.
That's right, y'all.
That's what we want y'all to be, victorious when it comes to growing your own food and having stuff at your house where you don't have to go out and fight these food prices, trying to be on a budget. You want to spend $50, end up spending $150 at the grocery store. You don't want to do that.
Right.
Wow, you can just start planning now with the victory garden.
Next is number 6. What is number 6? Now that your soil is ready and it's time, now you got to plant your crops.
Yes.
Remember that plan that you created? Go back to that plan and look at where you're going to be plugging in what. Yeah. You've already started the seeds, right? And they have, if you start them right now in June, well, look, come August, they're going to be ready to transplant outside.
Oh, yeah.
So you need to go ahead now and get started with your brand new garden if you haven't already. Yeah. Okay? So now it's time to plug and plant.
Plug and plant.
Now, when you get ready to plant your crops, you've already added the compost to the bed, right? And now you're getting ready to make your little hole so you can put your plug in. You may decide to drop in some fertilizer, like some blood meal, some bone meal, or some worm castings, or an organic fertilizer, like Epsoma. I think it's like a 533, something like that. But you're going to drop some of that into the hole. You may even decide to get some mycorrhizal fungi to just give it an extra boost because you're just now building your soil, right? You may decide to add in some what are those minerals that we used to, azomite. You may decide to drop some azomite in as well, right? And then you're going to pop in your plant. You're going to cover it, put the soil back into the hole and make sure that you close the hole around it and give it a little press because you don't want any air pockets, right? So now it's time to plant those crops inside of all of those beautiful garden beds that you worked so hard to create a few months back, right?
Yeah.
And now we finna grow some food.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you also want to go out there and keep an eye on those small crops.
Please.
Because a lot of stuff happens when those small crops get in the ground. Different insects, rabbits, or whatever the case is. You want to keep your eye out on these new crops.
Watch them like a hawk, okay? Because you want to if you see that something is nibbling on them, it's best to get a hold of it while they just nibbled on one leaf. Because if you wait, they will take down the entire plant and you'll come out there 5 days later and be like, what happened to my beautiful plants, right?
Yeah.
Check on them every day, okay?
Yeah.
All
right. Okay. Number 7, water and maintain. Maintain a nice frequent system on when you're going to water your crops.
Right.
Because, temperature, how the temperature is. I ain't even got to say nothing about that. But you want to make sure that your crops don't dry up.
No, especially when they're young. You don't want them to dry out. So again, that's where that irrigation comes in at. Because when you plant initially your fall garden, it's still kind of hot outside. Yeah. Right? It's still kind of warm. It may not be scorching hot, but it's still kind of warm. So you don't want to have your crops dry out and then they shrivel up and die. All right. So make sure that you are watering on a consistent schedule. And then as the temperatures get cooler, you will not be watering that much at all. In fact, you may be going from watering 2 or 3 times a week to watering once a week, And so doing it that way, keeping a close eye, will just make sure that your plants will continue to grow and be healthy. And also depending on what you are planting, get on a good schedule of fertilization. Yeah. Since you're going to be growing mostly brassicas, that's a lot. That's mostly nitrogen, right? You don't need to put phosphorus and all of that on a head of cabbage. They would benefit more from some blood meal or some feather meal, or maybe a liquid fertilizer like fish emulsion, so you're going to be primarily feeding your brassicas nitrogen.
Yeah. And also when it comes to watering, if you're using drip tape, before you plant that start in the ground, turn the drip tape on,
right,
and see where the water is wet at. See,
right,
find out where the water's coming out at,
right,
and you see where the water's at, and you put that plug right there where it's wet. Because if you don't do it that way, and you just put it in there when there's no water in the drip tape, that drip tape gonna move, and it's not gonna even water your crop.
Ask us how we know.
Turn that water on first, and then put the plant in there where you see it's wet, where the wet water's coming out at.
Right. We learned that the hard way. Our very first time using drip tape, we rolled it out, laid it out all nice and beautiful, and we pinned it in place, and we looked at where the emitters were on the drip tape, and that's where we cut the holes at in our ground cover.
And we was like...
And that's where we planted the plant at, right?
Yeah.
And then when we turned the water on to water our crops,
and
the hole was right here, and the emitter was way
and I thought I had it made. I was like, can't nobody tell me nothing. I'm finna get ready to grow my own groceries. And there wasn't no water in the drip tape. That drip tape slid down away from my... I was so mad. I was like, man.
Like, how in the world did this happen? Didn't we measure this properly? And we did. But then we discovered that once that drip line fills with water, once it swells, it's going to move away from where you initially had
that water going to move it.
It's going to move, right? So...
we don't want that happening to y'all.
No, we had the hole here, and it was being watered way back here.
Yeah.
So that's a very, 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 very good point, y'all.
Yes, it is.
So just make sure that you are on a good regimen when it comes to fertilizing and watering. Now, I will say this, when it comes to your brassicas in the fall, you really don't have to fertilize them that much at all, right? I would say once you plant them, you're giving them that initial fertilizer, and then you can come back a month later and you can give them more of that fertilizer. But the Brussels sprouts, however, you need to feed them more.
Yeah.
All right. You need to feed them every 3 weeks, because you're trying to put on all of these little baby cabbages all up you literally up the whole stalk of the plant, right?
Yeah.
So you really want to feed them heavily fish emulsion. I would recommend, because it's going to go right to it.
So, all of those things that we're going to be doing for I guess you could say the fall coming up, we're going to grow the same thing that's in those packages.
That's right. Listen, because the goal here is 1 year without the grocery store.
Yes.
And if you're doing a victory garden, the purpose for that is you don't need to go to the grocery store.
That's it.
That's the purpose of a victory garden. So you don't have to go to the grocery store and depend on resources, right, that are coming from other locations. So do your best to think about the things that you and your family love to eat, and make that a part of your victory garden. Okay?
That's right. That's right.
All right. So I think that is going to do it. I think that is it for our little notes here. Let me make sure. Yeah, I think that is it for the notes that we have on planting your victory garden and how you can go about doing that, you all. And keep in mind also that your victory garden may not just be feeding you and the people in your immediate household, but you also may want to think about how that victory garden could also help your extended family.
Yeah.
Too, in cases where you may have some situations where they did try to grow a garden and something happened and it just didn't work, and then God forbid stuff hits the fan and now they don't know what they're gonna do, So it's not for the lack of trying. They just met some issues that they had no control over, and now they're stuck in a situation, especially if everybody is just now trying to do it for themselves. So we got to have some mercy.
Yeah, we got to have some mercy.
Yeah.
But the blessing to all of that is everybody is on the same page. They can team up and have a double garden. They can grow together.
Oh, so
They can
true.
help each other out. And then neighbors seeing this action, then everybody starts saying, okay, Victory Gardens is taking off, and it's spreading. Everybody's willing to work, harvest, teamwork, make the dream work.
It does.
Yes.
It does. Now, some honorable mentions here. I want to make sure we don't forget about those things that are good for pollinators. Don't forget your marigolds. Don't forget your zinnias. Y'all know I love me some zinnias. Don't forget all of these different flowers that will bring pollinators to the garden. And be mindful, if you're growing a victory garden, you want it to be victorious.
Yeah.
So stay away from chemicals.
Yeah.
Do not use harsh chemicals to control pests in your garden. Do not use synthetic fertilizers in your garden. Grow your food organically, okay? Find organic ways to control the pest in your garden, because we cannot afford to keep losing our pollinators. They are dying at record numbers because of all of the harsh chemicals people are spraying.
Yeah, and those pollinators help the crops to produce fruit. So, it's very, very important that we make sure we take care of our pollinators.
That's so true.
Yes.
That's so true, you all. And another thing here I'm going to suggest is making sure that you buy books. Don't download a PDF and leave it on your computer. Buy books that you put on the shelf, okay? Because if the internet goes down for any reason, and your books are on the internet, your books are on Kindle, or I don't know if Kindle's directly connected to the internet or if it's downloaded. I don't know how Kindle works. But you don't want your books to be in space. Yeah. You want your books to be on the shelf.
In other words, you want something tangible.
Exactly right.
Old school.
Exactly right.
See, everything is going to be there for you for the next 5-10 years until you get the hang of it.
Right.
You got the book step by step.
Right.
And then it becomes second nature. When we keep learning. We all are still students of gardening.
That's true.
But this Victory Garden that we are promoting is for everybody to be independent so we can feed our family.
And another thing too, if you are not yet comfortable with starting your crops from seed, I understand that. Still buy the seeds, right? Yeah. Because there's going to come a time where you are not uncomfortable with starting from seed. Get your seeds, okay? Yeah. But in the meantime, if you are really uncomfortable, there is no shame in buying starts or transplants. Yes. It's going to cost you. Yeah. But there is no shame in starting from there if that's where you are most comfortable with as a beginning gardener. Ain't nothing wrong with that, okay? Yeah. So y'all can do that as well. Just make sure you plan accordingly. Know your zone. Get familiar with what grows in your area. Make a calendar. I'm making a calendar for zone 8 and it's not ready yet because it's time consuming making that calendar, but I'm making it for all of you really. But it's time consuming making that calendar. But once it is done, it'll give you like a step-by-step guide from January to December of what you can do every single month to make your garden successful. Yes. Okay? Yes. So I think that's going to do it.
That's it.
Y'all, look, we have really enjoyed this table chat with you all, and we hope that you have found this table chat helpful, because we do want to bring you information and table chats that's going to be beneficial to you. We're not always just going to be sitting here shooting the breeze. Yeah. We want to bring you information that will be beneficial to you. Yeah. Okay? So y'all, that's it. If you like the video, like it, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Share our content as well with others that you feel will benefit from watching our channel as well. So thank y'all so much again for watching Homestead Heart Table Chats. second episode.
Second episode of Table Chats.
Yeah.
And it's been a pleasure.
It has, y'all. Peace and blessings to each and every one of you. And we will see y'all in the next video. And remember, grow your groceries.
Yes, y'all. Grow your groceries. Peace.